good. I think we all really like it, and working with the indigenous people is really good, and with all of the miraculous biodiversity and the strange creatures and the bizarre plants, and it's just limitless and amazing. And I'm not real happy about leaving, but we have to go and make money. But the upside is also that I'll have better internet, and so the live stream quality will improve, and I'll be able to do music again. And so, yeah, basically we're just gonna go and get our money together and then come back. Hopefully, it won't take long. So this live stream was kind of prompted by something that I mean, I've always been aware of this, but it's kind of gotten worse, I think, over the last couple of months or a couple of years. And what I see happening is that people tend to reject the mainstream narrative. They wake up, they take psychedelics, they drink ayahuasca, or they just have an epiphany, or whatever happens. And then they actually don't become free-thinking people. They don't really cultivate a process for experiencing gnosis on their own. They just adopt a different narrative. So it's like you crawl out of one box and right into another box that's prefabricated for you. And that, to me, is not what this is all about. And so one of the sort of effects of that is that it creates this culture where people that are thinking critically and are, I would say, applying intelligence, it's like this thing of following your heart but bringing your head with you. It shouldn't be about abandoning intelligence to become spiritual. And I think that to a very large and disturbing degree, that's actually what people tend to do. Yo, what's going on, Mr. Menace? So, and one of the tactics, it's not entirely, the blame doesn't lie entirely with the people and the consumers. It's a tactic that the frauds and the scammers, and even I think the egomaniacs that are well-intended but just deluded. I mean, calling Deepak Chopra a scam artist is probably going a little far. I think in general he intends well. He's not out to do any harm really, but you shouldn't just make stuff up either, and I'll explain in a minute what I'm talking about there. But so these people are selling ideas that people want to believe already. And so, it's really easy to craft something that sounds, quasi-scientific, that people really want to believe, and then sell the idea to them. One of the most blatant examples of this is the Japanese scientist with the ice crystals. He's not even a scientist, but he made this book where he said that he taped labels to bottles and then froze the water, and then the ice crystals made all these amazing patterns. And first of all, if you're going to be scientific about this at all, you would have to have like a distinct pattern that always formed in connection with the love label, not just one crystal that had this and they're clearly snowflakes that he just took a picture of. And if you actually read the book, it should be really, really abundantly obvious that it's not real. And he had another experiment that he did where he had some rice or something, and then people said really mean shit to it, and it supposedly looked way uglier than the rice. And, people have tried to repeat the experiment, and nobody's gotten the results that he claimed. So, but it's something that people really like the idea of, that our consciousness could affect water. And I'm not necessarily even saying that it can't, but I am saying that experiment was completely dumb and unscientific, and there's it was nothing. It was just nothing. And, it made millions of dollars. And, so what I'm getting at is that people have made it uncomfortable and difficult if you're going to question things, if you're going to point out to people that maybe they haven't thought something all the way through. people will kind of get upset with you and say that you're, being negative, or that you're just closed-minded. And so what we have is a microcosm of the same exact issue that we have in the macrocosm in society at large, where critical thinking and being intelligent is kind of, uh, you know, what is it called? Like what a dam does to water. It's impeded, discouraged by people that are trying to um, insist that everyone conforms to their ontology. And so this is what is happening when, people that are trying to be out of the box thinkers, and embrace all of this stuff. You can't be critical of anything. And that's really what intelligence is. I mean, it doesn't matter what realm you're unplugged the okay, it's back. With things like with Nassim Harriman, for example, who is totally a fraud, totally cognizant of, he's totally fake, he lies all the time, he's been busted lying. But it's an idea that sounds really good to people. People like the idea of the Taurus. He talks a lot of spiritual stuff that I think appeals to a lot of people. And the reality is that everything that he's saying is totally imaginary. There's no theoretical basis for any of it at all. And I think it's just so important to balance the pentagram, right? Like, we need to, if you want to know the truth, you should know as much about physics as you do about metaphysics. I think that being a holistic person in the modern era is absolutely essential. And I think it's amazing and wonderful to be able to have knowledge of muons and quarks, and to know, for example, the mass of a proton, and to also understand what is really meant by as above, so below. And these things actually are not mutually exclusive, which is something that a lot of people believe, that reason totally breaks down in the realm of the spiritual. And really, I think that idea is there just to allow people to believe things that are obviously false. One really good quote that I always really loved is that faith is our ability to believe that which we know to be untrue. And so, I think it's really important, because we really want to be sort of recruiting the gnosis, these experiences of genuinely escaping matrix programming, empower and enrich people, and they make people better people. So if we are really just making it look like a loony farm of morons, it's not really going to encourage people that are in the matrix to want to escape. The flat earthers are a great example of that. People think like, okay, yeah, that's great, I want to be outside, thinking out of the box, and end up like these idiots. I mean, there are a number of ways to observe curvature without any advanced science, with your naked eyes. But Nassim Harriman, let me elucidate on this a little bit, because I watched a couple of his videos, and at first I was thinking like, oh wow, this guy's pretty interesting, and a lot of it kind of made sense. And but then he got into the mathematics at the end of the video, and that is when I mean, it's not like I'm a really, really advanced mathematician or something, but I know the basic equations for a lot of the stuff, and I know what I'm looking at. And he is just literally just making scribbles on the board and lying about what they say. And I couldn't believe it, that he would be so brazenly fraudulent, that he would go that far. And at one point he said the mass of a proton is actually equal to the mass of the entire universe, which is so patently stupid that it's difficult for me to believe that anyone could believe it. If you understand what mass is, that is just like such a dumb thing to say, that it's incomprehensible that anyone finds this guy credible when he says stuff like that. So again, our education in the physical world has got to correlate with our metaphysical and spiritual development, or else we're not really good for much. And so the value that he gave the atomic weight for a proton was something like 10 to the 26 power. It's actually 10 to the negative 47th. So it just, and here's the thing, his entire um, theory is based around this lie, so none of it's real. So you can just toss it all out. There are no tiny black holes everywhere that are actually what particles are, and all the stuff that he says is based on an idea that is patently false. Um, and it's crazy because the people that follow people like that are so convinced that they're groundbreaking, and they feel so empowered by this idea that they're part of this little collective that's in on this, secret wisdom that only a few select people have, when in reality it's just nonsense. But they really cling to it. And there was one guy on Facebook that was just absolutely convinced that I hadn't done any research, because if I had done research, then I would believe that resonance theory was all true and that Nassim was a genius and all this stuff. And then also there's the lies. The guy said that he had received a letter from the White House. The White House never heard of him. He said that he got awards from a couple of colleges. Those colleges never heard of him. So if you are following that guy, just know that he's completely full of shit. There's no reality to it at all. And I mean, we can go on and on about all these guys. What I said about Deepak Chopra earlier, I think that he just kind of ran out of ideas. And to me, even just as a guy with a relatively small YouTube channel, I feel some responsibility to not misleading and lying to people and putting false knowledge out there. And Deepak Chopra, I heard him say recently that the Vedas make reference to synchronicity. It's just retarded. That's just not real. It's just not real. There's no reality to it at all. And I know it's really condescending and whatnot, but the reality is that people like Deepak Chopra and Nassim Haramein, whatever his name is, they can get away with this stuff because they know that their audience is not bothering to do any research and educate themselves at all. And so they know they're not going to get caught. They know that these people that, claim to be spiritual and deeply invested in all of this stuff have not bothered to actually read the Vedas. And they're not going to know when he tells them that there's something in there that's definitely not anywhere in there at all. Like, not even, it's not like he misinterpreted something. He knows he's just making stuff up. Probably he ran out of materials some number of years ago, and he's just now just making shit up. And I personally find that reprehensible, because this is a person that people look up to and admire, and they look to him for guidance, and he's a liar, and that's not really that cool. Sadhguru, of course, a lot of people like him. I like his sense of humor and stuff. He recently said, the democracy in the United States is by the people, for the people, of the people, but the people are retarded. And that was just awesome. I just absolutely loved the fact that he said that. But he definitely killed his wife so that he could be with a young girl in his ashram. There's no question about it. He burned the body, even though it's not his custom, when the police asked for it, fled the country, and what's really, really sad about that is that I think that there probably is a lot of truth to a lot of stuff that these guys teach, right? And what he was saying is that his wife had just chosen to just leave the body. But, we're talking about a young woman with 2 young children. She's just going to decide that she's so enlightened that she just has to leave the body right now at this very moment, or else what? If she's so enlightened, then she's going to have compassion for these young children who she's just for absolutely no reason taking their mother away. It's absolutely incredible to me that people will actually believe this. Yeah, I'm actually looking for more people to have conversations with on this channel, because I think that would be interesting. I don't mind talking a lot, but sometimes it gets old. But one thing I won't do is just start making shit up because I've run out of ideas, you know? I mean, but yeah, I mean, you know, just for what it's worth, Sadhguru definitely killed his wife, you know? And so people believe him when he says that it's possible to just transcend the body, that you can reach this level of enlightenment. And maybe that's true, but if it is true, the fact that we're getting this information from someone who is a murderer just really casts a negative light on the whole thing, you know? So I really think that it's, we have a responsibility as ambassadors of this higher consciousness to have discernment and to think critically and to weed out the bullshit and the insanity so that we're not associated with it. Yeah, well, killing his wife is really what bugs me the most. So, you know, I know I mentioned in the comments that I was going to talk about the flat earthers, but that's just too stupid to even talk about. I mean, it's just it's religion. It's not out of the box thinking. It's not questioning anything sensible. But here's something that we can actually talk about. You know, I'm sure a lot of you guys consider conspiracy theories. And, you know, conspiracies definitely happen. And one of the things I think is really interesting about the time that we live in, you know, for example, before COVID and the whole thing happened, there was a tremendous amount of content about how two things: anti-vaxxers are idiots and conspiracy theorists are idiots. Like huge, huge, huge. That's all that was on Facebook for months and months and months before COVID and all of this stuff hit. And the thing is, if you have a situation where there's a very small group of people that have the ability to orchestrate a conspiracy and they are the ones that benefit from that conspiracy, it's actually not ridiculous to consider that there might be a conspiracy. It's more likely than not, actually. You know, if you think about the fact that like a billionaire is pretty much, you know, by definition, a sociopath, maybe even a psychopath, very, very likely. As you go up and up and up the ladder of wealthy people, of powerful people, of CEOs of big corporations, there's a higher and higher percentage of them that are psychopaths and sociopaths. And so when you get up to the strata of people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, the likelihood that those people are complete psychopaths is very, very, very high. And, you know, it's totally valid to point out that, you know, Merck and all these companies, they have lengthy criminal records. They have a long history of not caring whether people live or die. One of the companies that's manufacturing the vaccine has never gotten FDA approval for a single medicine that it's created ever. And they've just like rushed through this vaccine. There's just so much crazy stuff that we have to pay attention to, you guys. And I mean, Biden, right before, I think it was during the presidential race, they asked him about the vaccine, and he said, "No, I would be very skeptical of taking a vaccine that is highly untested and that Donald Trump recommended." And then within a few months, he's the president, and he's saying that it was terrible that Donald Trump would play politics with the vaccine, which is exactly what he had just done a few months earlier. And so, you know, this is when I'm always talking about, you know, watching out for cognitive bias and selective perception and our cognitive dissonance. Yeah, I mean, the whole vaccine thing I think is stupid. You know, I mean, the bottom line though is in my world, you have the right to make your own decisions, period, end of story. And nobody has the right to regulate what you put in your body. Nobody has the right to tell you what you can put in, and certainly nobody has the right to tell you that you have to put anything in it. But you know, it's really interesting to see how this works. And I think introspection and reflection on the part of people that are kind of associated with the spiritual movement, I guess, is actually far less common than it should be. There's a lot of like spiritual pride, a lot of unearned ego, and people kind of think that they've fixed themselves. So the process of self-examination that is supposed to be the cornerstone of spiritual development actually sort of disappears in a lot of cases. And, people that are not taught discernment and critical thinking are not going to just suddenly develop those skills just because they've stopped believing in American democracy and capitalism and whatever else. It's not going to just happen. And so somehow, people like me have to like encourage people to really start, using critical thinking and really trying to discern, who is really an ally and what is really solid information and what's not. Something that has been bugging the shit out of me for decades is this idea that the psychedelic movement was entirely orchestrated by the CIA, that the Grateful Dead was a CIA black op, and that, Timothy Leary was a CIA agent and all this stuff. This is where critical thinking really serves you, right? Because what psychedelics tend to do is make people care less about consuming, question authority. They literally restore neuroplasticity to the brain and cause new brain cells to generate, which means that whatever indoctrination, whatever programming has occurred is going to be loosened. People are going to be freed from it. So the people that really push this idea that psychedelics are somehow part of a government plan to make zombies out of people is just not even remotely consistent with the actual effects that it has on people. And, I've tried to confront people about that and say, what is it about psychedelics that makes you believe that it could somehow serve the government's purposes to the extent that they would have this crazy, operation of creating the Grateful Dead and sending Timothy Leary out to tell kids to tune in, drop out, and take over. I mean, the psychedelics turn people against the establishment. So the idea that it's all some CIA operation is, and I'll tell you how it started. I actually know the point of origin exactly for this idea. There's a fundamentalist Christian woman, and so, right there, we're getting our information from the dumbest and most insane demographic on the face of the earth, Christian fundamentalists, right? So that's not good. And so basically what it is that anything that has any undertones of spirituality but has no connection to Jesus is Satan, period. It's all works of the devil. And so this woman decided that, psychedelics must have some kind of connection to the satanic cabal that's running the planet. And so therefore the CIA must have created this psychedelic movement in order to undo all of their work, brainwashing everyone or whatever. I mean, that's the thing, you guys. In order to believe this stuff, you kind of have to be an idiot, because it's so obviously just retarded, but it's amazing how many people are actually, believing this stuff and adopting it. But, if you just apply a little bit of analysis to it, it just comes apart. It's just completely dumb. By the way, if you guys have any questions or anything you want to take these topics anywhere else, I'm all for it. It just drives me nuts seeing this stuff all the time. Okay, so astrology. I'm not saying that there's nothing to astrology. The universe has cycles and phases, and I'm sure that the energetic constitution of the universe at any given time is connected to everything in the universe. That's how this stuff works. Well, I'm 100% confident in the mass awakening that is supposedly occurring. It's definitely occurring, and it's the reason why we're locked in our houses and we're having all of our rights stripped away, and it's the real reason for all of that. And I think there are some things kind of working against us, and one of those things could be a law of the universe, that everything has an equal and opposite reaction, which means that when someone becomes more enlightened, there's a boat out there, if you're wondering what that noise is. when someone becomes more enlightened, there's a equal increase in ignorance somewhere else. And I think if you look out around the world, that is really, really evident, um, that it's actually true. So, that's a difficult thing to try to come to terms with. That I think that the eternal balance of these antinomical energies, these opposites that are interacting to give rise to creation, kind of put us in a position where we sort of just have to live with all the evils of the world and the process of creation and destruction. There's always going to be war. We can't really meaningfully improve anything because it's always the same ratio of energies that exist in the universe, no matter what. And so that's difficult. But as far as like the mass awakening that's going on, it definitely is a real thing, and it's been happening for a really long time. I also think that a lot of this stuff that I've been criticizing tonight is propaganda. A lot of it probably originates with the propaganda machine because they are looking to discredit and discourage people from, investigating this outside of the box thinking and abandoning the matrix and all that. They want to make us look stupid. And because we're all coming from a culture where they have been dumbing people down for 50, 75 years, really, really worse and worse over the last 30 years or so, the people that are jumping the fence, a lot of them are lacking in critical thinking skills. And so we end up with flat earthers and people that just believe all kinds of crazy things and make it really easy for matrix people to just ridicule people that step out of it. I've also noticed that a lot of people don't have very nuanced thinking. I occupy a space with my philosophical disposition and ontology and even my interpretation of what it means to be spiritual that doesn't easily fall into a category that people are used to associating. People usually can compartmentalize, and I think what we need is more of that. Everyone should be an iconoclast at some point. We're looking for uniqueness, and unfortunately, we are contending with a tendency within every human being to want to fit in. There is an urge in the subconscious, in our basic instincts, that drives us actually to conform with the rest of the herd, and that isn't really the best thing. A lot of people think that herd conformity is just a result of influence that's being exerted by the puppet masters, and really it's an easy job because it's something that people are already inclined to want to do in the first place. So it doesn't really take a lot of provocation to get people to try to just act like everyone else. And so I was going to talk about astrology, not because I necessarily don't think that there's anything to it, but what I've noticed is that a lot of people that believe in it have not given it any critical thought at all whatsoever. And I think you should do that with everything, So my main beefs with astrology are that if you look at different systems from, like, if you go and get a reading from a Chinese astrologer, and then you go and get a reading from a Gypsy astrologer, they're going to be completely different. So if there's some objective way, or intuitive way even, of getting knowledge and information by observation of, heavenly bodies, why isn't it consistent? If astrology was really a thing where people had decoded the position of the stars and they could read them and tell you what it means, then the Mayans and the Chinese and the Eastern Europeans would all have the same interpretation of the astrological stuff. And the reality is that that's not the case. And since it's not the case, that really is a huge chink in the armor of astrology. And this is where our ability to practice non-attachment comes in, and I think it's really important. People become invested in ideas. They want to believe things. We have to stop that. For myself, I don't want to believe anything, and I know that I really can't believe anything. Subjective experience and subjective feelings don't really mean anything to me. I'm too smart for that. You have to be realistic, and if something doesn't stand up to critical assessment, then you have to be totally okay with letting go of it. And that especially people that are supposed to be on a journey towards enlightenment and higher consciousness should be even less inclined to just shut people out when they critique or question something. It's really, really hypocritical that this movement in general gives people so much crap for not questioning the mainstream narrative, but then they come over to the spiritual side and they will ostracize anyone that questions any aspect of the things that everyone is supposed to believe and accept, I guess. And so the spirituality is becoming like a trend. It's not really an experience-based organic development that has meaning and all of this self-transformation. It's just another ego trip, and it's just another box. It's just another prefabricated ontology to adopt, just like a religion or anything else, So, yeah, I mean, and also, if you look at the tendency in astrology to make blanket interpretations of, well, you're a Taurus, so all of these things are true of you. It's so obviously not real that it doesn't really even bear elucidation, that it just doesn't even make any sense, It's just so obviously not true. Yeah, so that's really the biggest gift that I think I can offer the people out there is a reminder that you don't know anything, and you're never gonna know anything, and you should be overjoyed, because what we want is the probability wave to remain in a state of flux, for it to remain a wave. Once it collapses into a point, the potential for all of these other expressions disappears. And so when we collapse a wave, we've eliminated all these other possibilities. And I think that belief in just about any category is basically a disease. Well, yeah, I mean, different tarot decks have remarkable characteristics, and I would never use a tarot deck for divination. That's not what they're for. It's it's really funny to me that a lot of the people really think Aleister Crowley was evil, but then they do things that he considered evil. Like paying people. Remember a couple of weeks ago I was talking about Earth Pulse, this mystery school that's charging people $4,000 to, among other things, learn somehow to be a shaman over the internet, which is completely stupid. You cannot learn to facilitate ayahuasca over the internet. You have to learn to work with sounds and energy in a way that requires you to physically be present, right? It's completely insane. Well, right, I'm just saying that, the different tarot decks have surprising features. Crowley's deck, actually, I prefer because it's the most sophisticated. The symbolism is the most rich, and his book, Thoth, there is just so much depth to a lot of the explanations that he gives about the various cards. And there are certain aspects of, okay, like I was saying, it's not that I don't think there's anything to astrology. My point of contention is that people probably really don't know how to read it. and there's no consistency, unless people are using the same methodology. And so who's correct? But what you're talking about with the arcana and the association with certain astrological signs and conjunctions and all that, that actually isn't astrology, and it's something more like when you perform the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, and you are concressing symbolism. So you are cramming a bunch of ideas into a single point, so that you can process more information at once, and so that you can sort of create these consciousness bombs where the meaning is concentrated into a point and focused like a laser beam. And so the real purpose of associating the paths on the tree of life and the Sephiroth and these astrological signs and whatnot is it has more to do with the concepts that are associated with the astrology and the Sephiroth than the actual, astrological aspect of it. It's really about ideas and consciousness. And here's my other beef with astrology. It's a golden calf in a way, because one of the few times I actually agree with the Bible about anything is this idea of a golden calf, and really worshiping anything. I've never understood what worship even is. Like, you just kind of adore at something generally. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what is the point in that, And I think that we are all embodying the divine. We are a fragment of the Godhead that exploded. And so we're co-equal to the highest aspect of the Most High, right? We're not any lower. Our will is sovereign and all of that kind of stuff. And so in the case of astrology, in order to get good at it, you have to invest so much time learning about all the conjunctions and the houses and, all of this stuff. When in reality, I think you have much better access to much more accurate information through just developing your intuition. And the process of developing your intuition is going to have a lot of other benefits that you're not going to derive from learning astrology. So personally, I've always considered, whether astrology is real or not, I still always have considered it kind of a ridiculous waste, because, and also actually an impediment, because you don't look to the outside world for that kind of guidance. And this is something that any Gnostic would be absolutely abhorred by the idea that you would take any kind of direction from these, physical manifestations, So I think it's really healthy to be really skeptical of astrology, and also a lot of the things that people will claim are proof. And this is the habit that I've trained my mind, and it's something that we all need to learn to do if you don't already. Whenever you think that you have found proof of something like reincarnation, really try to counter it with its opposite idea. By the way, do me a favor and hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. We are demonetized, so contributions from you guys out there are all we get, and we really appreciate it. We're moving tomorrow, and we're going to be doing it by the skin of our teeth financially. So PayPal and Zelle address in the description. I'll actually put it in the chat right now. We really do appreciate your support. Times are tough in these post-COVID. Man. And I didn't hear any astrologers guessing the about COVID. But yeah, I think we have much more efficacious, much more powerful ways to do it that are much less time consuming and overall have a much greater reward versus risk, in the sense that we're investing so much time in astrology and it may not even be anything. Okay, but then there's this thing of proof, right? And I know I've talked about this before, but it's something that, we really should get good at. So we have people that will find these children that have memories of, one of them was his grandfather. And geneticists tell us that we have the ability to remember anything that our ancestors experienced. And so that's not proof of reincarnation. It's not. And, uh, I have experiences of having remembered things that, a specific past life. I knew entire chapters of this guy's books before I ever opened them. And there was a lot of stuff. I've made videos about it. I've talked about it. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. But I'm still skeptical. I'm not going to say that this is absolutely true because I can come up with so many other explanations as to how it could happen. No matter how improbable a coincidence, the possibility of coincidences is always possible. And, I'm English. I could have a common ancestor. It's possible that we could access like a universal mind and extract relevant bits of information just through sheer willpower. We really never prove anything. And so I think we should let go of those ideas of, having that kind of resolute knowledge and conviction, and certainly not discourage people from critical thinking. It's crazy how triggered people get when, I just offer criticisms of, these people. And really the most maddening thing about it is they would tell me that, oh, well, you have opinions about things you research. No, I would never speak about something I have no knowledge of. That's one of my main rules in my life. I don't do that. The reason I know that these people aren't legitimate is because I actually have knowledge of these things. So, always look for alternate explanations. Don't be afraid of criticism and skepticism and critical thinking. I can assure you that you can use all of those cognitive processes and still something will remain of your spiritual being. I think a lot of people are afraid of that if you shine too much, skepticism and critical thinking on these ideas, that they'll just evaporate, and that's not what happens. But I think collectively we can do a better job of not oppressing the critical thinkers among us, and using a little bit more discernment when we're sort of creating our ontological grab bag. So thank you guys so much for your support, and I'll see you again soon with much better streaming quality.